Hello, everyone. This is Luke Johnson from Noetic, and we are going to cap off our discussion of Jane Eyre with Jennifer Avery. And I'm broadcasting from a unique location today, so it is to be determined how much I will be chiming in, so long as the background noise doesn't cause too much interference. So I'm going to let Jennifer pretty much do everything, unless I feel the need to obnoxiously insert myself into the lesson. So, Jennifer, why don't you do your thing?
Okay. We're probably going to finish today because we left off. Jane had just found out what happened at Thornfield and what happened to Mr. Rochester, and now she is on her way to Ferndean, which is a manor house that Rochester has, kind of out in the forest. Deep buried in a wood, she says. But in any case, the chapter 37 starts off with Jane arriving at Ferndean. And she says she gets there just around dark. And this is a really interesting description that she puts in here that I want to read to you, because this description sort of reflects how Rochester has been, what his mood has been, and what state of mind he's been in since she's been gone and since he's been living in this place. She says, "To this house I came just ere dark, on an evening marked by the characteristics of sad sky, cold gale, and continued small penetrating rain. The last mile I performed on foot, having dismissed the chaise and driver with the double remuneration I had promised. Even when within a very short distance of the manor house, you could see nothing of it. So thick and dark grew the timber of the gloomy wood about it. Iron gates between granite pillars showed me where to enter, and passing through them I found myself at once in the twilight of close-ranked trees. There was a grass-grown track descending the forest aisle between hoar and knotty shafts and under-branched arches. I followed it, expecting soon to reach the dwelling, but it stretched on and on. It wound far, far and further. No sign of habitation or grounds was visible. I thought I had taken a wrong direction and lost my way. The darkness of a natural as well as a sylvan dusk gathered about me. I looked round in search of another road. There was none. All was interwoven stem, columnar trunk, dense summer foliage, no opening anywhere. I proceeded. At last my way opened. The trees thinned a little. Presently I beheld a railing, then the house, scarce by this dim light, distinguishable from the trees, so dank and green were its decaying walls. Entering a portal fastened only by a latch, I stood amid a space of enclosed ground from which the woods swept away in a semicircle. There were no flowers, no garden beds, only a broad gravel walk girdling a grass plat, and this set in the heavy frame of the forest. The house presented two pointed gables in its front. The windows were latticed and narrow. The front door was narrow too. One step led up to it. The whole looked, as the host of the Rochester Arms had said, quite a desolate spot. It was as still as a church on a weekday. The pattering rain on the forest leaves was the only sound audible in its vicinage. And so this description, as I mentioned, is very much like how Rochester has been. First of all, it's hard to get to. And once you think you've gotten to it, there's still farther to go. Which it reminds me of a walking trail at Berry College in Rome, Georgia, up to the House of Dreams. But in any case, everything is like in this thick wood, in this thick forest, and so it's hard to get to, for one thing. And then when you get to it, it's desolate and it's old-fashioned, and it's just and she even asked herself, can there be life here? And it just looks like it hasn't been disturbed in years. And that's kind of how Rochester probably has felt throughout this time when Jane has been gone, isolated, hard to get to, and old. So, but in any case, she gets to Ferndine, and then she notices not long after she got there that somebody's coming through the door, and the person coming through the door is Mr. Rochester. And this is how she describes him. This is the first time she has seen him in a year, and maybe a year and a half, maybe more. His form was of the same strong and stalwart contour as ever. His port was still erect, his hair was still raven black, nor were his features altered or sunk. Not in 1 year's space by any sorrow could his athletic strength be quelled or his vigorous prime blighted. But in his countenance I saw a change that looked desperate and brooding, that reminded me of some wronged and fettered wild beast or bird, dangerous to approach in his sullen woe, the caged eagle whose gold-ringed eyes cruelty has extinguished, might look as looked the sightless Samson. And reader, do you think I feared him in his blind ferocity? If you do, you little know me. A soft hope blended with my sorrow that soon I should dare to drop a kiss on that brow of rock, and on those lids so sternly sealed beneath it. But not yet. I would not accost him yet. He descended the one step and advanced slowly and gropingly toward the grass plat. Where was his daring stride now? Then he paused as if he knew not which way to turn. He lifted his hand and opened his eyelids, gazed blank and with a straining effort on the sky and toward the amphitheater of trees. One saw that all to him was void darkness. He stretched his right hand, the left arm, the mutilated one he kept hidden in his bosom. He seemed to wish by touch to gain an idea of what lay round him. He met but vacancy still, for the trees were some yards off where he stood. He relinquished the endeavor, folded his arms, and stood quiet and mute in the rain, now falling fast on his uncovered head. At this moment John approached from some quarter. "Will you take my arm, sir?" he said. "There is a heavy shower coming on. Had you not better go in?" "Let me alone," was the answer. John withdrew without having observed me. Mr. Rochester now tried to walk about, vainly. All was too uncertain. He groped his way back to the house, and re-entering it, closed the door. And so you can see that he is not a happy dude. I mean, poor John, who's basically the butler, you know. Poor John is just like, is just trying to get the guy out of the rain, and he just, leave me alone, you know, just really, you know, really surly and unhappy, obviously. And of course, who can blame the guy? I mean, he's lost his eyes. He can't see anymore. He's lost one of his hands. And so he's not a happy dude. And we see that. And so after she sees him, you know, Jane waits for a little bit, and then she decides to go on and knock on the door. And remember that Mary and John are the two people that Mr. Rochester is with, and they were at Thornfield, so they know Jane and they know everything that happened. And so here's what happens after Mary answers the door. Mary started as if she had seen a ghost. I calmed her. To her hurried, "Is it really you, miss, come at this late hour to this lonely place?" I answered by taking her hand, and then I followed her into the kitchen, where John now sat by a good fire. I explained to them in few words that I had heard all which had happened since I left Thornfield, and that I was come to see Mr. Rochester. I asked John to go. She basically asked John to go get her stuff, and she asked Mary if she'd be able to stay at the house, and Mary says that she can. And then after all of this has kind of been settled, and Jane knows that she'll have a room now, and Jane knows that she can stay here, the bell rings from the parlor. And, you know, back in those days, the servants had like a little row of bells that connected by pulleys into the different rooms of the house. and usually it was on like a little piece of wood that was labeled which room it was coming from. And so this is the parlor bell that has rung. And Jane says, when you go in, tell your master that a person wishes to speak with him, but do not give my name. I don't think he will see you, she answered. He refuses everybody. When she returned, I inquired what he had said. You are to send in your name and your business, she replied. She then proceeded to fill a glass with water and place it on a tray, together with candles. Is that what he rung for? I asked. Yes, he always has candles brought in at dark, though he is blind. Give me the tray and I will carry it in. And so Jane's taken in the tray. Okay. This parlor looked gloomy. A neglected handful of fire burned low in the grate. And leaning over it, with his head supported against the high old-fashioned mantelpiece, appeared the blind tenant of the room. His old dog Pilot lay on one side, removed out of the way, and coiled up as if afraid of being inadvertently trodden on. Pilot pricked up his ears when I came in. Then he jumped up with a yelp and a whine and bounded toward me. He almost knocked the tray from my hands. I set it on the table, then patted him and said softly, "Lie down." Mr. Rochester turned mechanically to see what the commotion was, but as he saw nothing, he returned and sighed. Give me the water, Mary, he said. I approached him with the now only half-filled glass. Pilot followed me, still excited. What is the matter? He inquired. Down, Pilot, I again said. He checked the water on its way to his lips and seemed to listen. He drank and put the glass down. And this is you, Mary, is it not? Mary is in the kitchen, I answered. He put out his hand with a quick gesture, but not seeing where I stood, he did not touch me. Who is this? Who is this? He demanded, trying, as it seemed, to see with those sightless eyes, unavailing and distressing attempt. Answer me, speak again, he ordered, imperiously and aloud. Will you have a little more water, sir? I spilled half of what was in the glass, I said. Who is it? What is it? Who speaks? Pilot knows me, and John and Mary know I am here. I came only this evening, I answered. Great God, what delusion has come over me? What sweet madness has seized me? No delusion, no madness. Your mind, sir, is too strong for delusion, your health too sound for frenzy. And where is this speaker? Is it only a voice? Oh, I cannot see, but I must feel, or my heart will stop and my brain burst. Whatever, whoever you are, be perceptible to the touch, or I cannot live. He groped. I arrested his wandering hand and imprisoned it in both mine. Her very fingers, he cried, her small, slight fingers. If so, there must be more of her. The muscular hand broke from my custody. My arm was seized, my shoulder, neck, waist. I was entwined and gathered to him. Is it Jane? What is it? This is her shape. This is her size. And this is her voice, I added. She is all here. Her heart, too. God bless you, sir. I'm glad to be so near you again. Jane Eyre was all he said. So Rochester's like, first of all, he's not entirely believing that it's her, because he can't see her, and he has heard nothing of her from the moment she left a year before. So he has no clue of where she is, and he has no clue of where she might be or what she might be doing or anything. And so he's a little bit reticent, because he's like, is this really you? And he finally decides that it is. I mean, he's still not entirely sure, as you'll see here in a minute. My dear master, I answered, I am Jane Eyre. I have found you out. I am come back to you. In truth, in the flesh, my living Jane. You touch me, sir. You hold me, and fast enough. I am not cold like a corpse, nor vacant like air, am I? My living darling, these are certainly her limbs, and these her features, but I cannot be so blessed after all my misery. It is a dream, such dreams as I have had at night, when I had clasped her once more to my heart as I do now, and kissed her as thus, and felt that she loved me, and trusted she would not leave me, which I never will, sir, from this day. Never will, says the vision, but I always woke and found it an empty mockery, and I was desolate and abandoned, my life dark, lonely, hopeless. my soul athirst and forbidden to drink, my heart famished and never to be fed. Gentle, soft dream, nestling in my arms now, you will fly too, as your sisters have all fled before you. But kiss me before you go. Embrace me, Jane. There, sir, and there. I pressed my lips to his once brilliant and now rayless eyes. I swept his hair from his brow and kissed that too. He suddenly seemed to rouse himself. The conviction of the reality of all this seized him. It is you. Is it, Jane? You are come back to me, then? I am. And you do not lie dead in some ditch under some stream, and you are not a pining outcast among strangers. And no, sir, I'm an independent woman now. Independent? What do you mean, Jane? My uncle in Madeira is dead, and he left me £5,000. Oh, this is practical. This is real, he cried. I should never dream that. Besides, there is that peculiar voice of hers, so animating and piquant, as well as soft. It cheers my withered heart. It puts life into it. What, Janet? Are you an independent woman, a rich woman? And so he goes on and basically he kind of tries to get he tries to get more out of her than she's willing to give right away. She tells him that she's got money now and she's rich and her uncle died and everything like that. And so he hears this, and then and Jane, assures him, yes, I'm going to stay with you, even because I can do whatever I want to, and I'm going to stay here and I'm going to help you out. She says, I will be your neighbor, your nurse, your housekeeper. I find you lonely, I will be your companion, to read to you, to walk with you, to sit with you, to wait on you, to be eyes and hands to you. Cease to look so melancholy, my dear master. You shall not be left desolate so long as I live. He replied not. He seemed serious, abstracted. He sighed. He half opened his lips as if to speak. He closed them again. I felt a little embarrassed. Perhaps I had been too officious in my offers of companionship and aid. Perhaps I had too rashly overleaped my conventionalities, and he, like St. John, saw impropriety in my inconsiderateness. I had indeed made my proposal from the idea that he wished and would ask me to be his wife. An expectation, not the less certain because unexpressed, had buoyed me up that he would claim me at once as his own. But no hint to that effect escaping him, and in his countenance becoming more overcast, I suddenly remembered that I might have been all wrong, and was perhaps playing the fool unwittingly. And I began gently to withdraw myself from his arms, but he eagerly snatched me closer. So even now, Jane is still like, well, I know how crazy he is about me, but that doesn't mean that he still is, and maybe I shouldn't have been so quick to believe that he might actually want me still. And so she gets embarrassed, and so she kind of tries to get away from him, but Rochester won't let her. He says, no, Jane, you must not go. He says, I cannot give up these joys. And so she and they go on for a little bit, and she continues to tell him, yes, I'm going to stay with you and I'm going to be with you. And Rochester says, yes, but you understand one thing by staying with me and I understand another. You perhaps could make up your mind to be about my hand and share, to wait on me as a kind little nurse, for you have an affectionate heart and a generous spirit which prompt you to make sacrifices for those you pity. And that ought to suffice for me, no doubt. I suppose I should now entertain none but fatherly feelings for you. Do you not think so? Come, tell me. I will think what you like, sir. I am content to be only your nurse if you think it better. But you cannot always be my nurse, Janet. You are young and must marry one day. I don't care about being married. You should care, Janet. If I were what I once was, I would try to make you care, but a sightless block. He relapsed again into gloom. I, on the contrary, became more cheerful and took fresh courage. These last words gave me an insight as to where the difficulty lay, and as it was no difficulty with me, I felt quite relieved from my previous embarrassment. I resumed a livelier vein of conversation. It is time someone undertook to rehumanize you, said I, parting his thick and long uncut locks. For I see you are being metamorphosed into a lion or something of that sort. You have a faux air of Nebuchadnezzar in the fields about you. And that is certain. Your hair reminds me of eagle's feathers. Whether your nails are grown like bird's claws or not, I have not yet noticed. And so basically, all right, so Rochester it's funny because at the same time, Jane and Rochester are having these moments of doubt. It's like, well, maybe she doesn't want me, maybe he doesn't want me, and his reasoning is, well, I'm blind and a cripple now, so why would she want me? And but that cheers Jane up because she now understands that it's not that he doesn't want her. It's that he's afraid that she wouldn't want him, if you see what I'm saying. But again, this is another example of how they kind of really get each other because they have this same reaction at the same time for different reasons, but but they just, because they're both a little bit insecure as far as relationships are concerned, especially now. Rochester wasn't before, but he is now because of all that's happened to him. And so in any case, with all this, she tries to get him to eat, and she gets him to eat an egg or something, and they kind of talk and eat together for a little bit, and after a little while, Rochester kind of gets restless. She says, if a moment's silence broke the conversation, he would turn restless, touch me, then say, Jane. So even while they're eating, he's still not entirely sure she's there. Because everything's been so difficult for him and he can't see her and all that. So he's not entirely convinced even then. And so he asks, you are altogether a human being, Jane. You are certain of that? I conscientiously believe so, Mr. Rochester. Yet how on this dark and doleful evening could you so suddenly rise on my lone hearth? I stretched my hand to take a glass of water from a hireling, and it was given me by you. I asked a question, expecting John's wife to answer me, and your voice spoke at my ear, because I had come in Mary's stead with the tray. And there is enchantment in the very hour I am now spending with you. You can tell what a dark, dreary, hopeless life I have dragged on for months past, doing nothing, expecting nothing, merging night and day, feeling but the sensation of cold when I let the fire go out, of hunger when I forgot to eat, and then a ceaseless sorrow, and at times a very delirium of desire to behold my Jane again. Yes, for her restoration I longed far more than for that of my lost sight. How can it be that Jane is with me and says she loves me? Will she not depart as suddenly as she came? Tomorrow, I fear, I shall find her no more. A commonplace, practical reply out of the train of his own disturbed ideas was, I was sure, the best and most reassuring for him in this frame of mind. I passed my finger over his eyebrows and remarked that they were scorched, and that I would apply something which should make them grow as broad and black as ever. Where's the use of doing me good in any way, beneficent spirit, when at some fatal moment you will again desert me, passing like a shadow, whither and how to me unknown, and for me remaining afterward undiscoverable. And so,
Well, I have two questions.
okay.
I'll try to get this in quick before it gets too noisy.
Okay.
One, does not the fact that they are reunited under such circumstances when he is such a cripple, when he is blinded and maimed and all these such things, does not speak to the quality of the dynamic between the two?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, so we've talked about this all along, that the spiritual sort of romance between the two and what ties to bind them. And then secondly, I find it, yeah, there's been a lot of stuff that Rochester hasn't deserved. And in a certain sense, I guess he's right to play the victim, right? No one asked for him to be incinerated in such a way. But it's not like Jane, it's not like Jane wasn't given grounds to move on with her life. So the fact that he's doubting her commitment seems a little bit strange to me. And I think there's one other thing I wanted to say. Oh, maybe it'll come to me later. But can you perhaps field those two questions real quick?
Okay. Well, the first one was the tie between them. Was that it? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, obviously, the tie between. I mean, it's one of those things that would you rather be with someone who is healthy and handsome or pretty and bores the crap out of you and or annoys you, or would you rather be with a blind cripple who you can actually talk to and enjoy being with? And that's the thing. I mean, because it's like we said.
My experience is that the pretty boy wins, and I'm not the pretty boy.
I don't know about that. I'm not the pretty girl either. But yeah, that's been my experience too. But that's why this book is important, because but this is something for us plain girls and ugly dudes. It gives us hope. This is important stuff, dude. But yeah, it's the tie between them has been obvious from the very get-go, and so the way that it's like a destiny sort of thing, yes, but it's also that they understand each other. They understand each other on a level that most people don't understand each other. And that's why it's so important, why they're so important to each other. It's not that they complete each other, because that's a very trite and untrue idea in my opinion. They don't complete each other, they complement each other. And that is, and they understand each other's motivations and each other's moods, which is what's happening here. Is because Jane understands Rochester's mood so deeply. She knows exactly how to talk to him, and how to not make him feel more sorry for himself, or to make him more brooding, or to make him angry. She knows exactly how to talk to him, how to deal with him in this frame of mind. And so that's definitely the tie there is undeniable. And the second question was, okay, does Rochester, what was the second question?
On what grounds does he have to play the victim in this dynamic with him and Jane, or to doubt that she would be untrue? I mean, he was the one who was deceptive, and she's the one that has left behind so much to be with him again. So I don't know why he's playing this victim card.
Well, I don't think that he entirely is, like, he's feeling sorry for himself, and maybe he does feel like a victim, but at this, like, especially later on here in the next couple of pages, he admits that he deserved everything he got. That he admits that, and in a way, and yeah, he deceived her, and yeah, he deceived everyone, and he kind of wronged Bertha, and all of these things happened, and he lost his eyes and a hand, so he kind of got what was coming to him. And he later on again, he says that he never would have believed that he deserved, like he says actually here, he's like what does he say?
You know what's interesting to me while you're looking for that passage? I just insert this. As people who follow, the app and everything like that, I notice that I've been reading the Bible cover to cover, and a big thing that's emphasized is that there's this line about if your hand offends you, cut it off. If your eye offends you, to pluck it out. It's not lost on me in the connection here between those are the extremities and faculties precisely that Rochester loses. I wonder if there's any connection there. Have you ever thought about that?
There probably is. There probably is, because again, Charlotte Bronte's father was a parson, and I think she eventually married a parson, and so she definitely knew the Bible. And even from reading the book and all of the biblical quotes and references she uses, she knew the Bible. So that's probably exactly where she got that from, because she felt like that was a just punishment for him, and in a way it kind of is.
And he does encounter fire, right?
Yeah.
And this so
his house burns down.
Yeah, so yeah, we're getting some connections here.
Yeah, and the person who burned his house down was one of the people who was wronged. And so, and he even says at some point, I can't find it, but he says that he can't believe that it can't be real because I don't deserve it, is basically what he said. And so he understands that he did wrong, and he understands that he deserved what he got and more. But that doesn't, and he understands that, but would that cheer you up?
Well, it's interesting here. The fact is he survives.
Yeah, he does survive.
He survives this inferno, and I wonder if there's something to be, a case to be made here that he's been purified by the fire in some way, or that he has avoided the fire because of the amputation of these things. I just keep drawing out the analogy.
And again, that's probably very true. That's probably exactly what she had in mind, because yeah, in a way, after that happened to him, Bertha was gone, and like he basically withdrew from all of society, and yeah.
And this goes back to a theme that you and I have wrestled with since the very first installment. You've always talked about this book as being a book of universal salvation, and I've always been like, Jennifer, I don't know if I buy that. But if essentially Rochester comes out on the other side, he has to go through hell, I wonder if there's something to your idea that ultimately everyone gets saved on this particular theological view. It just might cost you a little.
Yeah, and Rochester's not an atheist or anything. He's definitely believes in a higher power, and so yeah.
So then if his belief was a virtuous belief, if you can see my air quotes, it was his actions that committed him to the fire, not his, which says something about the dichotomy between faith and works.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how that plays out in our salvation. But then you start to make the case that there's something more Catholic or more work oriented towards salvation, if there is a salvation theme in this, than true faith.
Yeah. Perhaps so, and he does have, in order to be saved, like in his brain, like in a way, for Rochester, Jane is his salvation and is his reward. Because here's the thing, though, because even though Rochester did all of these bad things, he lied, he deceived, he tried to do bigamy, all these things, but he was always kind to Jane. He was all of his goodness he put towards Jane, but he also was good to his servants. He was a good person. He was nice to everybody. He was generous with his wealth. He actually cared for people who were lower than him, which around this time in English society, that was generally not the case. Most of the time, people were horrible to their underlings, but Rochester was always very kind. He even paid well. Leah says much earlier in the book, when they're talking about Grace Poole, she says, well, Grace Poole gets 5 times the wages we get, and the master's not stingy. So he's paying everybody well, and he's good to everybody, and he's kind to them, and he's been especially kind to Jane. And almost those actions are how he gained his reward, which is Jane. You see what I'm saying? I'm not a theist. I'm not familiar with all of the Bible, and I'm not familiar with all of the a lot with philosophy or anything like that. But in my mind, Jane is the reward. She might even be representative of his salvation.
Maybe so. I think the thing that's only problematic about this, is, if Jane is really just a symbol for a greater sense of redemptive salvation, that's all fine and good. The problem is with this is if Bronte is trying to promulgate an idea that other individuals can be our personal salvation outside of Christ, there's something fundamentally blasphemous about the message that she's trying to communicate here. And I don't know enough about her personal biography to know where she was in her personal faith walk at this point in her life, but it's a big problem if there's not some sort of mitigating intercessor such as Christ in the romantic relationship, because there is an unstable love of deification of the others.
Yeah. But see, here's the thing, though, is I don't think that this book is about salvation. It's more about finding what is good and godly in the people around you. So I understand what you're saying. It would be fundamentally blasphemous. But at the same time, how do most people come to learn about religion? They learn it from other people. And I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. And Jane, in a sense, is a shining example of Christian virtue, and perhaps this allows Rochester to keep his faith, to keep on pressing on and finish well, even though he has been maimed by this fire. So there is that. I'm just playing devil's advocate here, and I'm just giving people some ideas to wrestle with in their papers and things like that as they're thinking through some of these issues. I speak without authority about what the ultimate conclusion is of this book.
But by the same token that Rochester is punished for the things that he's done wrong, Jane is rewarded for the things that she's done well. She went through a horrible childhood, but she made the best of it. She decided not to marry the person and not to live in sin with the person who desperately loved her, even though it cost her a great deal to leave him. She left him, and she was rewarded with cousins and a job. And then ultimately her uncle dies and leaves her all this money. And so Jane has been a good example throughout the entire thing.
And this is a great point, but I have to interrupt you here, and I don't mean to be rude. It's a little bit some dangerous theological thinking if Bronte is trying to promulgate this idea, because I'll tell you what, if you want to get ahead in this world, don't be a Christian. You know, if you want people to like you, if you want to have the hottest girlfriend or be a billionaire,
you're not going to be a Christian.
don't be a Christian. If you want temporal rewards, I highly suggest you going very far away from authentic Christianity, because it's not there. You're not going to sell your soul. And you know, this is a big problem, right? Because in American evangelicalism, I'm sure it's getting noisy over here. In American evangelicalism, there's a lot of this prosperity gospel that's talked about. And I'll tell you what, my familiarity with the Bible is saying the exact opposite. It's saying, I'm in the meek will inherit the earth. It's not, but what that means is not necessarily in this time frame. It's in a different eschatological time frame, like after Christ defeats all the demonic powers and comes in for the millennial reign.
Yeah.
Not now during the period of the first dispensation of grace.
Yeah.
And definitely not during the tribulation. Maybe after Armageddon.
Yeah, well, you know, maybe this was her response to that, because the society back in those days in England was also, if you wanted to get ahead, you had to act like a Christian, but you had to double cross a lot of people, and you know, so I mean, maybe that was her response to that. I don't know, but yeah, but you know, but again, and speaking from a completely literary standpoint, it's always good to see good people meet good ends. You know, that's the way stories work.
just like Hamlet, right?
Yeah. Well, Hamlet's a tragedy now. This isn't a tragedy. But that's the thing. I different, you know, different writers do it differently, and different writers either want to tell the truth, or they want we always want to tell the truth, really, but some of us like happy endings and some of us don't. Charlotte Bronte liked happy endings, and I like happy endings because that's how I escape. That's, you know, I don't like sad endings, because I know that everything in the world is going to end sadly. So this is how you escape.
That's false, Jennifer. It's all going to be okay. It's all going to be okay. I'll talk to you more about my friend Mr. Jesus later. Hey, so is it? We might need to just move on to having a happy ending with our seminar. So I'll just let you.
Okay.
I'll try to interrupt you minimally.
Okay.
I'll just let you finish.
Okay. All right. Well, but in any case, where were we? Okay. So, okay. So they, all right. So Rochester is still doubting that Jane is real. And he says, you are altogether a human being, Jane. You are certain of that. Wait a minute. Did I do that? Oh, wait. Never mind. I did that one already. Sorry. So okay, that's right. She had decided that she needs to reply with practicality in order to keep him from brooding, but he keeps going. And he says, where is the use of doing me good in any way, beneficent spirit, when at some fatal moment you will again desert me, passing like a shadow whither and how to me unknown, and for me remaining afterward undiscoverable? And again, he's not, he's even though he's kind of believing that she's actually there now, she's still is not entire he's still not entirely sure that she's going to stay. And so Jane, just completely ignoring this brooding, says, "Have you your pocket comb about you, sir?" "What for, Jane?" "Just to comb out this shaggy black mane. I find you rather alarming. When I examine you close at hand, you talk of my being a fairy, but I am sure you are more like a brownie, which is a spirit, which is like a really kind of shaggy looking spirit. Am I hideous, Jane?" "Very, sir. You always were, you know." "Humph. The wickedness has not been taken out of you wherever you have sojourned." "Yet I have been with good people, far better than you, 100 times better, people possessed of ideas and views you never entertained in your life, quite more refined and exalted. Who the deuce have you been with? If you twist in that way, you will make me pull the hair out of your head, and then I think you will cease to entertain doubts of my substantiality. Who have you been with, Jane?" "You shall not get it out of me tonight, sir. You must wait till tomorrow. To leave my tale half told will, you know, be a sort of security that I shall appear at your breakfast table to finish it." And so you see, Jane is kind of teasing him, but remember, this is how she reacted to him earlier on. Like he asked her, "Am I hideous?" And she says, "Very, sir, but you always were, you know." So she's trying, she's keeping up his spirits by continuing their rapport that they've always had. She's always going to be honest with him and tease him a little bit, and that keeps his mood up. And so that's what I'm talking about. She understands how to kind of placate him. um, and so and he as he finally talks her she finally talks him into having breakfast the next morning, and she's kind of teasing him again, and he says, you mocking changeling, fairy born and human bred, you make me feel as I have not felt these 12 months. If Saul could have had you for his David, the evil spirit would have been exorcised without the aid of the harp. There, sir, you are redd up and made decent. Now I'll leave you. I have been traveling these last 3 days, and I believe I'm tired. Good night. Just one word, Jane. Were there only ladies in the house where you have been?" I laughed and made my escape, still laughing as I ran upstairs. A good idea, I thought with glee. I see I have the means of fretting him out of his melancholy for some time to come. Very So she knows that she keeps this up and kind of teases him about whether there were men around and what the people that she's been with and all that. She'll keep him from being melancholy. Okay, it's just and so the next morning, they decide to go for a walk, I believe. Yeah, yeah. I think they decided to go for a walk, and he's convinced, and he's happy that she's still there, and he's more and more convinced that she's actually there and might actually stay. Um, and so finally, Rochester tries to get her story out of her, and she tells it. Um, she tells it to him. Okay, and then and after she gets done telling him about how she left and what happened after she left, she says, "I should not have left him thus," he said, "without any means of making my way. I should have told him my intention. I should have confided in him. He would never have forced me to be his mistress. Violent as he had seemed in his despair, he in truth loved me far too well and too tenderly to constitute himself my tyrant. He would have given me half his fortune, without demanding so much as a kiss in return, rather than I should have flung myself friendless on the wide world. I had endured, he was certain, more than I had confessed to him. Well, whatever my sufferings had been, they were very short," I answered. And then I proceeded to tell him how I had been received at Moore House, how I had obtained the office of schoolmistress and the ascension of fortune. The discovery of my relations followed in due order. Of course, St. John River's name came in frequently in the progress of my tale. When I had done, that name was immediately taken up. This St. John, then, is your cousin. Yes, you have spoken of him often. Did you like him? He was a very good man, sir. I could not help liking him. A good man. Does that mean a respectable, well-conducted man of 50? Or what does it mean? St. John was only 29, sir. Jeune encore, which means still young, as the French say. Is he a person of low stature, phlegmatic and plain, a person whose goodness consists rather in his guiltlessness of vice than in his prowess of virtue? He is untiringly active. Great and exalted deeds are what he lives to perform. But his brain, that is probably rather soft. He means well, but you shrug your shoulders to hear him talk. He talks little, sir. What he does say is ever to the point. His brain is first rate, I should think, not impressible, but vigorous. Is he an able man, then, truly able, a thoroughly educated man? St. John is an accomplished and profound scholar. His manners, I think you said, are not to your taste, priggish and parsonic. I never mentioned his manners, but unless I had a very bad taste, they must suit it. They are polished, calm, and gentlemanlike. His appearance, I forget what description you gave of his appearance. A sort of raw curate, half strangled with his white neckcloth and stilted up on his thick-soled highlows, eh? St. John dresses well. He is a handsome man, tall, fair, with blue eyes and a Grecian profile. Aside, damn him. To me, did you like him, Jane? So you see what's going on here. She's talking about St. John. And Mr. Rochester keeps asking her questions. He says, "Oh, I think like he's trying to undermine everything that she says about St. John because he knows that and because he keeps thinking, well, trying to think of an example. Like for instance, he says, but his brain, that is probably rather soft, and then he says." His manners, I think you said, are not to your taste, priggish and parsonic. His appearance, I forget what description you gave of his appearance, a sort of raw curate, half strangled in his white neckcloth. So he's basically projecting all of these negative images out there because that's what he's hoping to hear. Or if he hears it differently, that's what he wishes he was hearing. And Jane keeps shooting him down. Basically, no, actually, he's pretty smart. No, actually, he's pretty good looking. No, he's pretty well mannered and everything. And this just irritates poor Mr. Rochester. But again, Jane knows what she's doing. She knows that if she keeps his dander up, then he's going to get less and less brooding. And so she just basically she tells him the truth, but she withholds all of her thoughts about St. John just to kind of mess with Mr. Rochester. And so and at the end of all this description, Mr. Rochester kind of says to himself, damn him, because he's good looking and all of this. And but in any case, just really quickly before we finish, Mr. Rochester says, Jane says jealousy had got hold of him. She stung him, but the sting was salutary. It gave him respite from the gnawing fang of melancholy. I would not, therefore, immediately charm the snake. Perhaps you would rather not sit any longer on my knee, Miss Eyre, was the next somewhat unexpected observation. Why not, Mr. Rochester? The picture you have just drawn is suggestive of a rather too overwhelming contrast. Your words have delineated very prettily a graceful Apollo. He is present to your imagination, tall, fair, blue-eyed, and with a Grecian profile. Your eyes dwell on a Vulcan, a real blacksmith, brown, broad-shouldered, and blind, and and blind and lame in the bargain. I never thought of it before, but you certainly are rather like Vulcan, sir. And so you see, and so Rochester comes out with it and says, well, you better not stay around me, because you're thinking about this good looking man, and here I am, all ugly and Vulcan like, which is Hephaestus for you Greek mythology people. Vulcan is the Roman version of Hephaestus, the blacksmith god who was cast down and hunched over and walked with a limp, and he was the ugliest of the Greek gods. and and instead of saying no, you're not Vulcan like, Jane says, yeah, you kind of are. And again, this is exactly what she needs to do. And so in any case, now that they're together again, Jane is using her talents of observation and her talents of understanding Mr. Rochester's personality and understanding what makes him react how, to get him out of his funk, and to at the same time remind him that she's not perfect either. And so anyway, so it's the beginning of their reconciliation and all of the magical fun stuff that's going to happen. And she knows exactly what she's doing. And after that, it'll be over. So that's all we can do tonight, right?
Well, I'm picking up space.
I got you. Say no more. I hear it.
So maybe we'll finish it up next time if you didn't get as far as you would like. And,
okay. We'll call this part 1.
Yeah, this is the penultimate episode. So, and we'll get this uploaded to the app and everything like that. And we'll take this up again. Thank you again, Jennifer. Thank you again.
Oh, thank you.
All right, see you.